Hi there, LJUMC family. I wanted to take an opportunity this week to give you an update on our denomination, our connection as United Methodists. There's been much turmoil over these last years that's been exacerbated in this time of pandemic. But let's take a step back and look at the broader series of events. As you know, the United Methodist Church has been in disagreement for decades. While this has ostensibly been named as disagreement over issues of human sexuality, I suggest that this is one element, albeit a significant element, and that the divide is really more about overarching theology and how we read our scripture and the organization of the denomination. Now, the way that the United Methodist Church is structured, decisions about these things, our rules, our polity, can only be made by the General Conference, a representative body of delegates from annual and central conferences around the globe, who gather once every 4 years for this work. Now, back in 2016, the last time there was a general conference, a new group formed called the Wesley Covenant Association, the WCA, and they organized in opposition to the inclusion of LGBTQIA plus persons in ordained ministries or in the covenant of marriage. It is the leaders and organizers of the WCA who have worked up to the recent launch this past week of the Global Methodist Church, a standalone denomination separate and apart from the United Methodist Church. Now, as this organization's been taking place, many people across the theological spectrum have been working together under the assumption that a schism in the denomination is likely. A protocol for reconciliation and grace through separation was proposed in February of 2020 by a group that included Central Conference bishops, traditionalists, centrists, and progressives. And that had broad support for the upcoming 2020 General Conference. Now, in parallel, and indeed conceived in December of 2019 and in response to calls to dissolve the UMC, bishops and representatives from central conferences in Africa and the Philippines sought a plan that would change the structure of the United Methodist Church with the specific and stated goal of remaining united. Now, as it turns out, all of this took place just as the COVID-19 pandemic hit, and the 2020 General Conference was postponed multiple times and is now slated for 2024. The inability to faithfully wrestle with these protocols, these proposals, I should say, has been met with nearly universal frustration, and those leaders who formed the Wesley Covenant Association have now formally launched the Global Methodist Church. So what's next for the UMC? What's next for churches in Southern California? And what's next for us here at La Jolla UMC? Well, for the denomination, there's still expected to be a gathering in 2024. I honestly don't know anymore what decisions they'll face or how they'll move forward. But I'm certain that God's Spirit will be present, and I'm hopeful that delegates will respond. Now, for our annual conference, there's no movement for this conference to leave the UMC. As your pastor who also serves as the conference secretary, I can tell you that no such legislation has been submitted for consideration, at least as of today. And I don't see members of this conference seeking such an exit. When we gather as an annual conference in June, I'm certain that God's Spirit will be present and will guide our work. As for our church, I suspect that we will continue to be La Jolla UMC, a congregation that is welcoming and has vibrant and music-filled worship, both online and in person. I suspect that we'll continue to provide a place for children to learn and grow, that we'll continue to host music events that welcome our neighbors. I suspect that we'll continue to partner with community organizations like TACO and Pacific Beach UMC and the Interfaith Shelter Network and CCSA. I suspect that we'll continue to find a way to host rummage sales that gather many people from the community in this place. I suspect that we'll continue to host weddings and memorials and baptisms and arts events. And I'm certain, my friends, that God's Spirit will be in this place. Friends, we have work to do, and it's good work. May God guide us. May God strengthen us. Grace and peace to you, my friends.